Matriz, alternative virtual reality.
So, I'm here in VR chat, looking over this, really nice virtual kind of city with Alex Meland. And Alex, you are running the YouTube channel Alex VR and also the host of the Between Realities podcast. So you have been doing what we are starting to do now with this podcast for quite some time and had a lot of interesting guests. I know, amongst those I've heard, I think have been the Kent By podcast and the Andrea. Um, it's really interesting, and I thought it would be cool to meet up to chat a bit about what got you started on this, because we have some common interests, philosophy and VR, sort of discussing this. So could you tell us a bit about your podcast and your YouTube channel and what you're doing?
Joachim, thank you so much for having me, man. This is awesome. This rooftop has some great vibes. I'm loving this, and this city is like reminding me of some LA vibes. It feels cool, man.
Yeah.
I was telling you before we got rolling here that I became a fan of your podcast pretty much right away, because you call it VR and philosophy, man. Those are like my two favorite things in the world to talk about. Like that is literally why my podcast started.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, Alex VR is my YouTube channel, and I have a buddy who his name's Eva. He is my co-host on Between Realities, and we met living here in Arizona through a mutual love of VR. He started a Reddit to meet other people in Arizona who were also VR fans, and we met up, and he was like, "Hey man, if you want, some help doing your channel and stuff, I would love to, So he's like, he follows me around with the camera at the conventions and stuff like that we were going to before the pandemic. And, we interview people and go to like, the conferences and stuff, and just like get involved as much as possible. And we would just be hanging out and like having conversations. And he and I are both, kind of like down the rabbit hole type of dudes. And, we would be talking about VR and how the implications of the future, it's like the manifestation of something much, much grander. And we would like really start going off on this. And we were like, you know what, dude, this is like great podcast material, man. Like right now, like this conversation, so we just decided to start it up. And, after going to like OC6 and VRX and CES and a handful of other conferences, I had met a lot of people and, made some great friends and people who, like yourself, who are VR content creators. And, they've joined us as guests on the show, and we've just had an absolute blast with it. So we did 15 episodes, and after 15 episodes, we like learned a lot about like the flow of it. And, we had a lot of ideas that we wanted to implement, but all was rolling. It was hard to like stop it for long enough to like implement new ideas and like get some new stuff going. Like for example, we were using a set that we had purchased off of just like some random website, like some stock set website that Spaceship was. But we were like, we need our own Between Reality spaceship, so we got somebody to build us a set. We got a new logo, like we got a merch store up and running, like we got all these things going.
That's nice, man.
We have like some theatrical elements that we really wanted to introduce into the show that we finally had the opportunity to plan out and start to introduce. So we're really, really excited to do it, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, the virtual studio is interesting because, I mean, there are some benefits, of course. Unfortunately, you can't go to the conventions right now because of COVID, etc. But you can at least still have guests virtually with the setup that you have going. So could you tell us how does that work? How do you do it?
So it's honestly right now, and we have plans for other stuff if possible, but right now it's mainly just a Skype call. And or I guess now we use Zoom, but for a while we used Skype. Recently now we've been using Zoom. But Harry and I, or Skiva and I, his name's Harry, we sit in the same room on camera together. And we sit at a table together in front of a green screen with a green table, and we're both in the camera shot. And then we put that into OBS, and then we have like a TV screen built in to the scene, just like an image. which now in our new set, here's a little spoiler alert, will be animated. So it'll be like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which is like a big inspiration for us on like our
Nice.
show, because I loved that show, Space Ghost Coast to Coast, growing up. And like they would have their TV screen with the show guest like like animate in to the scene, you know? So we've got like a 2D screen that's going to animate into the shot now that'll have the guest on it. And that's just them, you know, that's just like their OBS or their Skype feed or their Zoom feed there.
Awesome that you're
During the
stepping it
pandemic,
up.
however, yeah, but during the height of the pandemic, when we were all quarantining, I sat at my house in front of a green screen. Skiva sat at his house in front of a green screen, and then he would just make it look like we were still sitting behind the same desk. And we did that for like 5 or 6 episodes, probably.
Yeah, I see. Well, it's really interesting to go on, please.
Oh, well, I was going to mention the scene that we got built was actually a fully 3D rendered space. Like we're using it on 2-dimensional scenes, building it into OBS, but the room itself is actually a 3D render. So we're like trying to think about ways to like maybe use it in something like this, where we can like pull the spaceship into a program, bring everybody in. We're all like standing inside the Between Reality spaceship, and then maybe we can do like a special show, you know, once a month or something, where we have people come in and join us or something like that. But right now we're not really sure the logistics, but that is something that we would love to do at some point.
Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, doing the podcasts wholly in VR, it has some great benefits because you're able to provide the scenery like this. But it's also interesting to think of the social connection in VR, because you do feel a stronger sense of social presence. But in terms of turn taking and so on, which I think we normally rely on some facial cues in order to sort of communicate that. So it's not always perfect either. Do you have some thoughts on social VR?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think you make a really good point when you say that how elevated the social experience is when you pull it into VR, because it's honestly, in my opinion, a completely different thing, you know? Like it's a totally different way to communicate with someone. It's a different way to connect. It's a different way to present information. It's a different medium. Like it's almost not, it's like you're almost not doing the same thing anymore. It's like you're trying to compare a VR game to a 2D platformer, you know, like there's just elements that exist in it that are almost incomparable, you know? So while I do love the idea of doing a podcast in VR, it would almost take a new shape if that was the case. Because now all of a sudden we feel like we're sitting on a stage on stools, like maybe, you know, like moderating a panel or something, you know, and a panel certainly is not a pod. Even if you record a panel, it's not a podcast. It's just something different about it. So I think it would be a good thing to, like I said, maybe mix up every now and then, or like might be good incentive for like Patreon subscribers or something, you know, like Patreon subs, and you all get to do like the once a month episode in VR where like you're really able to connect and spend some intimate time together. I think when it comes to some of the challenges that we experience in relation to like the subtle cues of communication, I think a lot of that stuff is going to be solved in the next generation or two of VR.
Yeah, I think
when it
so
comes
too.
to like eye tracking, I think eye tracking is numero uno, man. We get eye tracking, and it's not going to be like a full on like solution to the problem, but it's going to give us like, even if I was able to like look off from the distance and like very subtly just kind of like glance just with my eyeballs, you know, like no head movement, just like glance at you real quick, you could be like, oh shit, okay, he means business, you know, like there's a lot of subtlety that we could express just with eye contact alone. So I think that's coming really soon, and we'll start to see iterations, and I think VR chat and stuff like it will be some of the first apps to implement some of those things. And then it's just gonna get better and better from there.
Yeah, it's been really expensive to buy these kits for a long time, but even now, when they got included, like with the Tobii software in the HTC Vive Pro, the i version, then you see that okay, it's really possible to push the price down and to get like lip trackers and face trackers as well. I mean, the Oculus has published on it academically, at least, where they've made it work, but it's it would be great because subtle cues, like just that. It's almost, yeah, you can just combine it like, okay, I'm staring there, or if a subtle smile there, a sudden serious expression there, and you can communicate so much more.
Absolutely. And honestly, like that is, in my opinion, the number one application of the technology. You know, like I think that being able to look at someone is like the primary reason to have eye tracking in a VR headset. That and the performance capabilities of adding foveated rendering to everything. You know, if you can foveate render everything, it just huge frame rate increase naturally. So those two things I think are coming very, very soon, and I'm very, very, very excited for them.
Yeah, it will be great. But it's interesting to hear your reflections on, like, if you were to port the podcast to another medium, it would become a totally different thing. It really would. It would have another expression. And I mean, it's also interesting to think of. I mean, when I went into VR chat here today, I went and visited an environment, and suddenly there's this little girl-like character just screaming and walking over to me, trying to get some sort of social contact. And yeah, it's just that isn't the same thing as in real life. So it is social, but of course it's developed like new social conventions of what is okay. And that is great because you can meet strangers that way. But it's really, yeah, I think there will be some sort of development of new social cultures.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up. Let me ask you a question, if that's okay. Do you think that that like real life and virtual reality interactions like will have different standards as far as like what, like the way that you're willing to communicate with each other and like the things that you're willing to tolerate and like that kind of thing? Because let me give an example before you answer. Like my time in VR is limited. You know, like when I'm in there, I want to do what I want to do. And if I'm being bombarded by like a 12-year-old who just like wants attention, like you said, and is just having a blast, it might be enough to piss me off, if I'm being honest. And I might be like, dude, get out of my face. I'm not dealing with you today. You know, but if I was like on a park, playing in a park somewhere, and a 12-year-old was like running up to me, like trying to like throw me a football and stuff, I would probably like try to connect with him. And like, if he was being a little shit, probably sit him down and be like, hey man, what do we need to talk about? You know, rather than just being like, you know what, fuck this kid, I'm out of here. You know, like, so my question is, do you think that it's the same, or do you think that it's okay to have different standards when you interact with people in VR versus real life? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, my response just a few minutes ago, when this sort of thing, I don't know even what it was running towards me, then it was like, oh, hi, sorry, I have to go. But if it was some sort of message or like a friend request on Facebook, I might have just deleted it, right? So I think that in VR, it's not possible to hide between the interface in the same way, because you're there. And even the way you're behaving and moving your head, everything is visible, and I have my mic on, so it's not possible to hide behind the wall that is sort of separating us. So I think that people are trolling in VR chat, right? You can get a gang of people just running after you, like humorously, stalking you or whatever. But I think, for me, it will take time. I'm not sure if I will develop like this sort of virtual hostility, but I think it might happen. But then you have to sort of break down the feeling, because I'm feeling social. I feel like there is another person there, and then it makes me uncomfortable to be nasty. But it's a really good question.
Have you played a bunch of Echo VR?
A bit. I tried it for a few days at the start. Yeah, lots of
so
kids.
There's a big problem here, man. And there's an interesting conversation that we had on Between Realities during season 1 that I feel like is very relevant here. And it's that there are young kids, 12, 13, 14, whatever, who have the capability of grabbing onto your body and like humping your face. You know what I mean? Like they can like have like intense sexual gestures, and and I know in VR that's very, very invasive. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of behavior that like you would never, ever in a million years tolerate, or you'd never be able to get away with that kind of behavior in actual reality. But in VR, for some reason, it's definitely possible. I could start to virtually molest you right now, and I'm sure it would be uncomfortable to a certain extent. Maybe not the actual, maybe not as bad as actual. Of course, not as bad. But I think you know the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So this is definitely a conversation that we need to start having, because at some point, very, very soon, it's going to be close enough to the real thing where it might be punishable, right? Or there needs to be certain things put in place to where like you are able to safeguard yourself from that kind of behavior. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned it, because I did only try it for a few days, but yeah, there were some kids humping me when I was like changing the menus. Yeah, that's a great topic. Yeah, and I mean, it's weird and annoying for sure. And I mean, the case with virtual rape, that was even a thing when the text-based games, wasn't it? I think that there was some hacking of some sort of system that, yeah, there was like a news article a long, long time ago, and back then I thought it was ridiculous, but now it's not anymore. It really is a thing, and especially, I mean, imagine people with actual trauma. Right. It could be even more. It could be even more. Yeah, terrifying. And I think that's why we're seeing in VR chat they have all these like personal. You can define who gets to see this and this on your avatar, and who gets to get close in this and this way. So I think they're trying, because they're probably in the midst of it, facing the most of these problems. But yeah, it's a real big problem, and yeah, just imagine when you get the like haptic suits and just everything. It can get real very quickly.
It's going to, man. I mean, I guess you can say that, I don't know, like how quickly, like for real, like how many actual years until we start to like see virtual experiences that are like on par with normal sensory perception reality. Like one of my favorite movies in the world is Total Recall, man. And like the promise of delivering true one-to-one sensory perception reality experiences like in a gift package, like that is like mind-blowing stuff, dude.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's that science fiction. I think we are really scratching at the surface of some big stuff, man, which is like a big reason, again, why the podcast for us came up, and why philosophy is the word that I use to tie into this, because we really are, in essence, talking about the nature of reality, like what's real and what's not real, like, and where do you draw the line, and like we're starting to realize, and the more and more we talk about it, that there's just so many layers and like shades of gray in between it, like it's not black and white, man. Like it's going to be tough to define some of this stuff. We're gonna have to go back to the drawing board on the way that we've defined a lot of things that we have taken for granted for a long time, like what it means to be intimate, for example. Like you can be intimate with someone in VR even now without the use of haptics. You can have an intimate experience where you feel connected and your heart is beating, dude. Like, oh my God, like, ooh, like you start to scratch the surface at something like that. Like, what does it mean to be intimate? Especially when that avatar, whoever's behind it, maybe is no longer relevant, because the avatar to me is the right shape, but I don't care if you're some dude, as long as this one looks the right way and is moving the right way and saying the right things, so we're really going to have to like start to challenge our definitions of this stuff, and like start to have open conversations about the reality of this, man. Which is, I think, what we're doing. And it's super fun. It's fun to do.
It is. It really is. And yeah, there are so many questions of, again, the perfect topic for a podcast, by the way, because it will just never run out. But yeah, I mean, one of the topics, I think a YouTuber who actually got me onto the whole of the podcasting thing in VR, because I was invited on her show. And she had an episode once of a virtual cam girl, I think. So some sort of virtual prostitution in a sense. And yeah, that's also...
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
But that would
weird.
be enough
It's
to ruin a relationship. If like, you know, your wife or husband found out you were doing something like that, even though you like never touched anyone else, I think it would be
right.
enough to upset someone to leave you, you know? And if that's not like shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, it wasn't me. It was just an avatar, and I was just in there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
she
it's.
walks in and sees you with a robot on your head, pants around your ankle.
Not good. Not good.
No.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting things pushing that there on YouTube. I also saw another one, and that of course got like 1 million views in half a day. But there was some chick who had put on a haptic vest and gone into VR chat and tried to get people to touch her.
hmm
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was actually quite fun to watch because people didn't want to touch her. They wanted to touch this giant Pikachu instead in the back. So that
I
was.
know, right? Yeah, but on the other side of it is actually a gorgeous girl, which is of course why something like that gets 500,000 views.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we all love beautiful girls. Even women love beautiful girls. It's like
Seems to work.
the interesting thing. It does seem to work. Use what you have, I suppose.
Yeah.
Bhaptics is doing awesome stuff though, man. I've like been pretty close with the Bhaptics people since meeting them at CES.
Nice.
Jennifer Lee is the head of business development for Bhaptics, and her and I talk all the time. I like help her with her Discord and like Facebook and groups and stuff like that. And they have been like working super hard to integrate as much as possible into the Happy Back, man. Like more and more titles like every day are becoming available. I got it when Nathy did his 500,000 subscriber giveaway. He did a Gleam giveaway.
Really?
And I got one of like 3 vests that he gave away. I was super stoked.
Whoa.
Thing shows up. It looks amazing. Like the calibration, we're having a blast, like drawing the arrows on it and making it vibrate. But then there's like one game that it works with, and it didn't even integrate that well. And like we were like, damn, this is cool. And the thing collected dust for like honestly like almost a year.
Yeah.
And it was only until the Half-Life Alex integration when like I tried it again and it blew my mind. I was like, wow, like it did so many awesome effects that really added so much to the immersion. And now there's just tons of titles becoming available. And I think that if it's not an irresponsible decision for you, it's absolutely worth the money if you're a VR enthusiast to start to get into some of what they're doing. Especially
That's
the
nice.
vest. The vest primarily is the really cool one.
Yeah, so do they have other stuff than just the vest?
Yeah, they have vibration haptic response for the back of your hands for like thrill of the fight. So when you are blocking with your hands, it'll vibrate when strike happen. That feels really awesome. And then there's one for the face, which is naturally if you get headshot or punched in the face, your face max vibrates. And then they have them for your forearms, for gun recoil, and even for your feet, which I haven't tried yet, but they're on the way, so I'm excited. We're about to find out.
Wow, that's nice, man. I'm lacking behind on this stuff. I should know this. That's really cool, and especially like a gun recoil, that would help a lot in games like Half-Life Alex because I have the Vive ones, which I used for Half-Life. It's not very powerful. It doesn't feel like, of course, it doesn't feel like a real gun, but that would help. And just
Right.
So how much
even
is
the
the
vest
vest?
helps with gun recoil.
Yeah,
The vest
yeah, of
is
course.
500.
Oh yeah,
500
yeah, that's
US.
relatively decent. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, like I said, like if it's an irresponsible decision, I do not recommend it. Like you shouldn't put yourself out for it. It doesn't make you that much more immersed. But if you've got the money and you love VR, absolutely. Like there's enough at this point, in my opinion, to make it worth it. Especially if you have Half-Life Alex. And for me, Tower Tag. I love Tower Tag. It's one of my favorite games. And it's fully integrated with the haptics, which is awesome.
Oh, okay, nice. What is Tower Tag?
It's a competitive team-based shooter, kind of like paintball or laser tag. And it was recently moved into home VR setups, whereas before it was like only a location-based experience. Now it is downloadable on Steam. It's like $20. and it's like super simple. It's one of those games that's like easy to learn but very, very hard to master. And you like grab and pull yourself to towers and shoot from behind them. Like the center of your play space is occupied by a pillar, and you stand behind the pillar and like look around it and fire from behind it, and then capture a new pillar, fly to it, hide behind that one, and then you and your team like push each other against the other team, and it's super fun. I love competitive multiplayer games. I'm all about it.
Cool. So they used to have it at arcades. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, they even did like tournaments and stuff. And they recently did the Summer Cup, what they called the Summer Cup, and they let everybody join for free. And there was cash prizes and even vests for people who won it.
Nice. So next year, or Alex VR is heading for the top. Or did you even are you playing this professionally now?
I wouldn't say I played professionally, but I did play in the Summer Cup, and
Nice.
team and I took second. We went to the finals.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, it was.
Well, that's
it was
cool.
fun.
Yeah,
And
VR
shout out to my
sports.
team, Anti-Gravity.
Nice. Yeah, VR sports can be a big thing. And I mean, esports is so huge. So I'm wondering when we are seeing VR as really integrated into this. Do you know if there's been done anything? I mean, apart from
I mean, the VR Master League does a lot, dude. Like, they have big organized events for Echo Arena primarily, and then like Onward is another big one. I think that there's definitely a spot for VR sports in the world, VR esports. And the thing I love about it is that sure it's games, but like it really requires physical prowess.
yeah,
Like you need to be able to move your body. You need to be able to be quick. Like if somebody starts shooting at you, if you're able to lower your center of gravity fast and like move quickly, you can make some shit happen, you know? So I think it's awesome. And I think once the, like, you know, it's not like the Quest on your head, which is like kind of clunky and a little large. We don't have so many cords pulling on us. Like once it just becomes lighter, faster, and easier to move and like breathe and feel natural. Of the story, esports are going to blow up in VR one day.
Yes, it's true. I was thinking the same thing with when I tried Echo VR for the first time, mainly because it reminded me of playing football, which I really suck at. So I was thinking, oh, this is becoming a real sport now. I'm equally bad at both.
Yeah, dude, it's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard.
There's a lot to learn.
Yeah, and you know that everyone that is on the opposing winning team are all 8 years old, so it doesn't make you feel much better. But
that you know, the insult to injury there is very real.
Yeah, it is. So VR and philosophy as a broad thing. One of the questions that I've been exploring on my we also have a text blog that is connected to this whole thing, which is called Matrice. But we were discussing and we were touching upon this, but meaning and virtual reality, like virtual things doesn't seem to have the same sort of value attached to them. Like, I mean, we can easily buy a cup of coffee for like $5, but an app for $5 we sort of are hesitating to purchase. I mean, this seems to be like a trend at least. But that's at the same time, if you catch your wife being a virtual cam girl, that is still problematic. So do you have some reflections on where do this separation between, I mean, meaning and the virtual?
Meaning. That's such an interesting word, man.
Yeah.
Meaning is like I the word meaning resonates with me. You know, like there's a lot of like philosophical perspective out there that kind of suggests that as human beings we are meaning givers. You know what I mean? Like that is what we are. Like there is no inherent meaning to anything. You know, like things simply are, and we're passive observers giving meaning. And like that's what makes life fun, and that's why it's colorful, and that's why it excites us, because we're giving meaning to these otherwise innate playing of molecules or physical, you know, reactions over thousands of years or whatever. Like we're just watching it happen, but here we are like, oh, but that's good and that's bad and that's this and that's that and that means this and that means that. So whenever meaning comes up in the conversation for me, I always like it almost like comes back like straight back to like the tree trunk for me a little bit. You know what I mean? And I like
Yeah.
take it out from the tendrils and like pull it back in, and it's like, okay, wait a second, like, so meaning. It's like, I think when you start to look at it from that perspective, and you start to compare experience, like sensory perception experience, to virtual reality experience, and then to like dream experience, which is like another thing I mentioned to you before. I love dreams. Like, they're all real, you know? And then it comes down to like, well, which one's more real, like what's the most real version, And for me, I've always kind of like found comfort in like the Platonic and like Socratic perspective of things. I love that like ancient Greek philosophy. It's one of the first I learned and has like a special place in my heart. But when it comes to like stuff like putting value on virtual objects, I mean, things like that, I'm at the point in my life where I understand, that like it's an exchange of energy more than anything. Like, sure, I didn't get an actual hot cup of coffee to drink, but like if VR chat, for example, is something that I spend a lot of time doing and I enjoy VR chat a lot, then an investment of $5 into the thing that I love to spend hours doing is a no-brainer to me. Like, and if it's even if it's something simple like a cosmetic upgrade, or like a cool helmet or even a fake cup of coffee that I can pretend to have while I'm spending hours doing the thing that I love to do, like that value is there, like easy for me to spend that kind of money, I mean, so it's easy for me to drop a few bucks on a game if that's the only way I can get it, knowing that the people who made it stopped doing stupid, boring bullshit jobs to chase their dream of being a VR developer when everybody in the world was telling them the VR is dead and it's probably not a profitable market for them to go into. Like, that's on. The thing is, as a creator and somebody who loves to play everything and do everything, I honestly can't afford it. Like, I don't make the kind of money to be able to buy every game that comes out. I have to be very, very crafty when I make my purchases. And most of the time, unless somebody gives me their game, I'm not going to play it. That's just the only way. That's just it, man. Like, I have so many already. I have so much to do. The backlog is like piled in endlessly. And I want to do it all, but I already have so much to do, So something like Half-Life Alyx, I'm buying that shit, But other indie titles and stuff, even if I want them, sometimes I can't bring myself to do it because I'm the kind of person who wants to do so much that at this point I've had developers reach out to me and give me keys for games and stuff, and like I can't reach into my own pocket and buy every single game that comes out. So it can be hard to find a balance.
Yeah, especially if you're sort of staying tuned on what there is, then and also sharing those experiences, then it makes sense that that you can't buy everything at Steam Store. It's a really good point what you're saying, that we are projectors of meaning, and I think that can really be the powerful thing of VR, because it's not really the tactility of anything that gives it its real value, although of course we were just talking about the haptic West that is making it more real in that sense. So like, what kind of environments can we project meaning into? I'm always dreaming of like having a mind palace, like a place where I could go that I'm able to feel more calm, maybe a place for activities, a place for thinking, a place for meditation, and that would also be just an empty environment, but maybe it can be designed in a way that we are able to project meaning onto it and incorporate it into our meaning structure.
I think that's first of all, I think that is the nature of reality. Or I don't think that, but it is easy for me to identify with that thought process. I don't know what anything is, but to me, the nature of reality being that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's what all media is. Like that, this room that we're in, for example, this rain coming down elicits a certain emotion. This rain is not rain. This fog isn't fog. Somebody came in here with with a tilt brush or whatever it is and made an effect, and I'm sitting here experiencing it, giving it the meaning in real time.
Yeah.
I'm being like, damn, this is fucking calming. Man, that feels nice. This is these things, and I'm sitting there in real time as I'm experiencing it, applying the meaning right then and there. Like I'm looking at your avatar and perceiving a being of some kind, but when in reality, you're probably closer to your audio form if it's like true to sensory perception experience, you know what I mean? Because I can hear your voice in my ears, and that is closer to the reality of you, so to speak, than the avatar that I see here before me. But ultimately, I'm still giving meaning to that, and I'm giving meaning to the words that are coming into my ears, being like, wow, that has some deep philosophical, profound application, like, but what actually happened? Some sound waves came out of your thing, hit a receiver, translated them, turned them into some sound waves, hit my ear, like it's amazing what we've managed to apply meaning to using only 5 sensory perception organs, and like the way that we've managed to like get creative with how we use those sensory perception organs to perceive different things. That's what VR is. It's like us trying to manipulate our senses in a way that helps us perceive something that we would prefer to experience for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're saying about it being basically the way that reality works, or that it's possible to view it that way, yeah, it's true. I mean, think about how much is in the universe that we are basically leaving out. I mean, we've discovered so much more through science and instruments that our systems are leaving out. So this is also the case like within Gestalt psychology, and also the way phenomenology and existentialism, like Martin Heidegger, that this projection, I mean, we are projecting towards the world and framing it, putting it into manageable pieces for our own human minds. And it seems that this is very, very flexible, which is great, because that's why we have
the interesting part, and the part where like it like really kind of like takes a more like optimistic like on a mid, like some more optimistic light kind of shines on it, is like the whole self-awareness aspect of it all. Like maybe like something was out there giving it meaning, but like the self-awareness aspect of the whole playing out of all of those things is like, I don't know, that's like probably that's what makes us think we're us, like the whole I think therefore I am, the Rene Descartes, it's like we're at the far end of this like crazy playing out of physical practicalities and like sitting here giving it meaning, but then like also being aware that we're doing it, being like, I am sitting here applying meaning to stuff. Like that's like a whole nother level to it as well, you know what I mean? And VR might be a way to help people have those kinds of realizations, because I've been thinking philosophically for a long time. Some people have certain paths that they take to find those pathways in their brains that help them to kind of start to break down their thought and break down like what they perceive to be real and not real, and all of that, but there's some people who live their whole lives and never have a conversation like this. Maybe they were raised religious and they just always had the answers and were never told to question any of it, so they never dug inward in that way, and they never sat here and tried to peel the layers off and pick it apart. So VR true. Might be a way for somebody to put something on and be like, wait a second, what? Hold on, like if this is real, then how could that be? Blah 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 blah, and then they could start. That could be their own journey. For a lot of people, it takes something like a religious like stigmata, even like going deeply into pain, or like a Buddhist practice. I did Shaolin Kung Fu for 2 years in Sedona, Arizona, and I think that contributed a lot to my ability to like disconnect my mind and my emotions and my thoughts and all of that. Also hallucinogenic drugs, man. For a lot of people, they do something like LSD or mushrooms or DMT, and it just blows the door wide open, and now the world's no longer the same, and that's another contributor to how I've come to be who I am now, is from through hallucinogenic experience, and through just by doing LSD. All of a sudden one day I'm just sitting there, and it's all just pouring in, just information, just like flying in, man, and there's like no other way for me to interpret it. I'm just like, holy shit, like things I've like wondered about just like being revealed, through a hallucinogenic
self-evident.
experience.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
really good points. There are many parallels between psychedelics and virtual reality. But like you say, being in VR may, yeah, just the fact that you have experienced something a bit different from everything, and that, oh wait, so
Hmm.
things can be different given the same wait, and
Exactly.
especially psychedelics. I mean, the way that they are able to break narratives, to break the traditional story that you had over your world and who
Right.
you were in relation to that world. I mean, that can go like phew, your whole your
Yep.
whole worldview can just disappear in a second, although everything sort of looks the same. So that can be super
Hmm.
powerful.
And I've talked to Kent Bai and Andrea Ian Kojikoru on my show. This is something that came up during my conversations with both of
Mm.
them. And the point, of course, that they made that I always have a hard time realizing and like really focusing on is the fact that like that's all like anecdotal evidence, like, and how can we measure like a hallucinogenic experience in a way, or how can we share or replicate that truly, or like, or measure it in a way to like make sure you have the same experience that I had, like
Mm.
it's just this like big, messy, like convoluted thing where like, I can say I had that experience, but we just have to chalk it up to me saying that that's what happened, and at the end of the day, like, is there any actual truth and rooted in the words that I'm using? Absolutely not. There's no scientific proof. There's nothing like that. So it's not exactly a reliable method. And maybe using VR, we can find one. There can be like, hey, this program works. Like you put this on, put your headphones on, like in 30 minutes, you're going to be face to face with God and thinking about, who you are in this universe and what's important to you and the reality that you want to experience from now on.
Yeah, that's a good question. I
Possible.
mean, how to sort of take another, yeah, like the objectivity of the psychedelic experience. That's almost like a paradox because, yeah, how can you
Right.
reduce something so vast to like a numeric variable as you would in some sort of scientific thing? There's some problems there.
Hmm.
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 Yeah, what, what
Yep.
what is possible to show with psychedelics at least is the great effect it has on like depression and alcoholism, etc. So then you at least can identify it as yeah, as an like a solid intervention of some sorts. But getting the
Right.
psychedelic experience down on paper, yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So have you tried any of
Yeah,
these
but
like cyberdelics or psychedelic recreations in VR? Have you tried that before?
yeah, I have Skiva, my co-host on Between Realities, has a pretty popular video actually on the ayahuasca experience.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a VR ayahuasca experience that he sat through and did the whole thing, and then Joe Rogan talked about it on his podcast, and he was like
Mm.
one of the only ones with a video on it. He got like thousands of views from Joe Rogan talking about it. That's one that I have not done, but he has, so maybe one day we'll get his perspective on that. But one that I have done is that Sound Self, a technodelic.
Ah, yeah,
Are
you
you
did.
familiar with that
Nice.
one?
Yeah, yeah, I tried it. Yeah, we have a video on it.
Yeah, that one's
Ayahuasca
intense.
too.
I recorded it and I thought about, I was like gonna post a video, but then after I did it, I was like, man, I don't know. I don't think I want to post this, like, because I was in
Hmm.
there, I did a half-hour session. I was there for 30 minutes. And I mean, that trashed me. Like my voice was done because I was like really focusing on like that tonal fortitude, and like staying on it. And like I really was losing my body throughout the experience 100%, like the
Wow,
vibration
nice.
coming into my ears and the tone of my voice resonating through my body while I was doing that. Not to mention through my kung fu experience, I also did practice some mantra and like learned a lot about like tonal vibration and stuff like that and the way that it can affect the body. And I was actually kind of like, it was definitely something different. It definitely
Yeah.
sets out to do, it does what it sets out to do. And I almost felt like it was a little like vulnerable, like the
Hmm.
experience, because there's times where I would let my voice really like run all the way out of air and it's like squeaking and getting weird, and I'm just like connected, so I didn't really feel comfortable posting it afterwards, honestly, because I felt like it was just 30 minutes of me meditating.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand. That's a really good. That's a really good sign, though, that the application worked at least.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it wasn't enough to get me to continue to use it, like after that I was like, wow, that was intense and that was hard, and I'm glad I did it, but I wasn't like, holy shit, I need to get back in there and do that immediately.
Yeah, that, and
But it was
psychedelics
really
isn't
cool.
like that either. So that's that's also tense for
True
it.
that. True that.
Yeah, I should maybe explain to those who are listening, but the sound self is basically trying to induce some sort of synesthesia by visualizing your audio. So you get into this sort of feedback process by watching how your audio is, and I mean your audio, but yeah, your voice. And like you say, it's also the tactile thing, because when you're or whatever you're doing, you can feel it in like your ears and your body and your chest.
It resonates it through your ears, so it plays it back to you, and then you say it back to yourself, and it like wow, 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 and like it creates like the snowball effect.
Yeah. I think that is one of the things that psychedelic applications like cyberdelic or technodelic, which this one was called, has to have some sort of way of approaching like a harmony between the virtual and the real, because that is sort of the psychedelic trick, right? There is some sort of relationship between you and like the trees are waving back at you. And there are many people doing research on this by connecting like biometrical sensors like heart rate and electrodermal activity and all these things in order to get some sort of harmony between yourself and the external world.
Well, I'm glad you put it that way. That like really helps me helps me digest this. And like I'm thinking about, like you said, like when you're like interacting with trees, you're interacting with them during a psychedelic experience or hallucinogenic experience in a way different way, like, and what's happening is in your brain is communicating with itself in ways it doesn't usually. Like this part sends a message to this part, and that never happens, and like by doing that, you are literally carving new pathways. It's like really like, it's like dense woods, and it just fucking like plows through, and it's like, no, we're gonna make a path through here so we can get to that part over there. And by having those experiences, it like forces those carved pathways, like even though it's very dense woods, there's a million things still falling in the way that prevent you from getting to that spot. You still carve that path, and like I said, that like just opens up the doors, and it could help people start to reactivate that. That's actually why I started doing martial arts, is because after having hallucinogenic experience and then talking to a friend who did martial arts, I realized that that's what martial arts is a spiritual practice. Kung Fu is a spiritual practice. And how about instead of having to take a tab of acid or do a couple grams of mushrooms, you just walk in a circle with your hands like this and channel into the energy that's been existing for thousands of years as people have continued to keep those practices alive. Like it's like the Avatar from Avatar: The Last Airbender, if you're familiar with that show. It's just like the energy just continuously it like exists, and as long as you're willing to reach into it and pull some of it down, like just move in that way, just do that thing, and you can connect with it. So for me, it became a way to like get back to that place in the woods without having to do drugs.
Yeah, I think that is the hope for many, like the cyberdelic things, and it's really reminding me, of course, of meditation, right? Because you're mentioning various practices to get into these moods, and of course, it's not just psychedelics that can get you there, although they really get you there.
It's the easiest way. You could do 2 years of extremely brutal kung fu practice, or you could drop a hit and have a great night. But I realized that that's not a healthy way to stay in touch with that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not speaking against or for the healthiness of any of it. I'm just saying that I didn't want to have to rely on that as a means to be able to see that place. So that's kind of why I started that up.
Yeah, I just did another interview with a guy named Garrett Oyos, and he was mentioning the same thing, that well, you can't do psychedelics every day, so how can you emulate something that you maybe can get back to more often, and maybe use like psychedelics as an inspiration for the kind of things that we would like to have in VR. So I think that's
Right.
that's a good point.
Yeah, that really does bring it full circle. Like we might be able to use VR as a way to do it. So now you don't need to do the drugs. Maybe you don't need to have an intense kung fu spiritual practice. Maybe you can just have an application in VR that you go to a couple of times a week that just helps you meditate, helps you connect. You're not going to sit there and trip balls on it, but it can help people.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm also a bit skeptical to how far it's actually possible to push it, but of course, with time, it will be more interesting. But one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I'm going to try it next week, and I'm going to make a video on it, but using virtual reality in sensory deprivation tanks, that has always been, for a couple of years now, a really interesting idea that I've done it once before, but I couldn't I couldn't relax because I was about to destroy my headset. It like fell off a couple of times. But now I have Oculus
Oh,
Go that
wow.
I'm basically going to sacrifice my Oculus Go, and I'm going to be in there for 2 hours, running some sort of visual application, because that would be the opposite of haptics, right? You don't get any haptics or any feeling of the world around you because you're totally sensory isolated except for the headset. So I think that can, because when you are in the tank, that's one of the things that gets really psychedelic very quickly without anything. Because when you're in total darkness, you don't feel anything around you. Yeah, it's just nice. I think that can be a powerful combination.
So you have experience in sensory deprivation tanks without VR,
Yes.
and it's a very intense experience for you.
It's not really intense, but after about 30 minutes or so, you're sort of starting to forget where you are. I mean, you're just relaxing because you're used to getting input, right? Visual input in, I'm doing something out.
Right,
Visual input in, I'm doing something out all the time.
right.
So after you haven't gotten any input anymore and you aren't doing anything, and you can actually completely relax. So it feels sometimes like you're falling asleep, or it feels sometimes like you're waking up, but you haven't fallen asleep. And that's basically your
Mm,
mind like, wait a minute, aren't we doing something? And it's like, no, and then you go back. So it's very silent, and you don't have the same
hmm.
active brain waves. So it reminds me of like zoning into, yeah, it's basically a way to meditate very quickly, it feels like.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, because meditation is not easy, man. Like they call it a practice for a reason. Like the first time you do it, and this would be, I think this is good for anybody who's out there who might be thinking about meditating who never has. It's not easy, and you're gonna sit down and you're gonna have a very hard time separating your thought from like you're gonna have a hard time detaching from your thoughts. That's the biggest thing. It's like we're constantly thinking, but it's a practice of not attaching to thought and letting it show up. You observe it. Don't attach to it. Observe it and then allow it to pass without judgment. Don't judge it. Just observe it and let it go and come back to the center. And you just keep, it's like a practice of continuously having thoughts come up and being like, no, not thinking about anything. No, not thinking about anything. And if you just keep pushing them away, it like the gaps slowly kind of space out. And then before you know
yeah.
it, you can just stay connected for like a couple of minutes before you have a thought. And you're like, oh shit, like I was good. Like I was present. You know, it really is the practice of just being present.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And yeah, meditation is great. It takes a long time, but it's totally worth it. But yeah, the
Hmm.
tank, I mean, the problem with the tank, of course, it costs a lot. I don't really
Right.
have money to go there once a week in any way. So now I got a gift card for Christmas, and I'm basically saving up those 3 sessions to do a YouTube video on it, and to actually just
Nice.
put up the camera and make it run. And yeah, it will be interesting to
I
see
think
at
that's going to
least.
be a great video.
I hope so. And yeah, it
That
would also
sounds
be just be
awesome.
interesting yeah, just to notice what is going on, because during my first experiment I did notice some things which were promising, and there was some sort of visual experience. So some things were just going the other way, or there was just like a stream of visuals going one way. And what I found was that
Hmm.
I, at a certain point during the experience, I felt like I was moving at a super high speed. when I was lying still. So there was some sort of identification with the visuals at a short point in time. But it wasn't as if I was driving on a highway, more like floating through space really quickly. So I didn't feel like I was about to hit something, but I felt like I was the thing moving. And that, I just realized, okay, I have to do this. So I was saving up some money for
Well, that's exciting. I am going to wait until you've done that before you come on my show, because I want to pick your brain about that experience.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. So I have to go, man. I'm going on a hike, and I was.
Nice. Yeah,
I mean, you were saying that the thing about the rain, like you feel more relaxed. I was feeling relaxed, but also like, oh damn, it's raining. I'm going on a hike, but that's not true. It's not really raining here.
Man, well, this was super fun, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
It was really nice. Really nice meeting you, Alex.
An absolute pleasure, dude. Thank you guys so much. And
how are people finding your show? You're Alex VR on YouTube, right? And the Between Realities podcast.
Alex VR on YouTube. Exactly. Yep, it's super easy. YouTube.com/AlexVR, YouTube.com/Between Realities, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Come say hi. I'm all about multiplayer gaming. So if you're trying to play multiplayer games, hit me up.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to be on your podcast and and even have you back here. All right. See you, man.
I'm excited, dude. Thank you so much. See ya.
Nice seeing you. Bye-bye.